We're here with great New Zealander Janay Harding. Obviously not based in New Zealand anymore. Sydney based, I believe now. I guess just first of all, you've been making a name for yourself in the Bellator featherweight division. Just talk to us a little bit about how you found your way into mixed martial arts and why that was your sport.
Yeah, like you said, like I now live in Australia. I moved over here when I was about 10. So lived my childhood in New Zealand and then moved over to the Gold Coast. And I think just as a kid, I was always trying out a whole lot of different sports and trying to figure out what my niche was and I guess what I liked the most. And I ended up falling into karate. And then after karate, tried to progress onto something a little bit more challenging and found mixed martial arts, and I've literally just been doing it ever since. It just eventually evolved into a bit more of a career rather than just a hobby. And then yeah, after traveling for a little bit, I moved here to Sydney and hoped that that would open up a little bit more opportunities, give me a little bit more options in the way of training and stuff, and it has so far, so it's been good.
Now, people might look at your record, see 6-4. Obviously, you're still very young, but you look at some of the names you've had to fight early in your career. Obviously, Arlene Blenko and Jessica Rose Clark would be up there. Obviously, they're two of the best. And those two fights were both at bantamweight. Talk to us a little bit about finding yourself at featherweight and why you decided to sort of stick around that weight class.
I mean, it was sort of like, it almost wasn't really my choice. I was kind of sticking to bantamweight as much as I could. It was getting harder and harder to stay there as I was going through, like when I had my first fight, I was 18. So through that 18 to like 22-year-old period, I obviously ended up developing a little bit more as a female and gaining a little bit more muscle mass, etc. So it was getting harder and harder to stay at 61. And then when I got the call up from Bellator after my Contender Series fight unfortunately didn't go through, it was sort of just made sense to, come up to feather. I never like was avoiding feather because I thought I was too small or whatever. It was just sort of like, I guess, a push from my coaches and the people around me. They were like, oh, you're always a bantamweight, etc., etc. So I just sort of like took their advice as the Bible. And then I guess once this opportunity came, I was like, yeah, of course, like featherweight, what's the difference between like 4 kilos or so? And then just after these 5 fights with Bellator, I feel like featherweight is definitely like a great place for me. It's not a super hard cut for me, not gonna lie. Like I obviously don't struggle that much to get to 65, but for that reason, it's a little bit more comfortable. I get to put a little bit more effort into my training, technical work. I don't have to worry about the cut all the time. I'm not stressing too much, and I don't at all feel like I'm a small featherweight. So therefore, it's kind of been a good transition and a positive transition in a sense.
How much stress do fighters put on a body for weight cuts? Obviously, like us fans can sort of just guesstimate, but not having gone through it ourselves, like what is that part of fighting actually like? And is there anything that goes on behind the scenes that fans probably don't see during that struggle?
Yeah, definitely. It's still such a head spin, like every single time. Like I know for my last 2 or 3 fights, I've woken up on weight. So I know this is not a hard cut, but every time it still stresses you out just in the back of your head. Like, I guess, especially if you've done those really hard cuts, especially if you've sat in the sauna and bath all day, it's something that I think gives you like bad nostalgia and you really want to avoid it as much as possible. You just remember those really hard 40, 50-minute baths or whatever it may be. And it's just a grueling day and it takes everything out of you. So I think during the camp, a lot of like fans, as much as they may have seen our water cuts or videos of it or footage of it or whatever, and know that that part's hard, during the camp is hard as well because you're definitely battling that mental of seeing how your weight's tracking. If it's not tracking exactly 100%, it does stress you out. And then mentally you're trying to make sure it doesn't stress you out because the more stressed you are, the less weight you lose. And then it's just like this constant battle, which causes, I think a lot of the time it causes a really bad relationship with your food and with your body. But I think a good thing about COVID was that I kind of ended up settling a little bit more with my body, understanding that, yeah, it fluctuates, it goes up and down within like a range of like 10 kilos, which for a lot of people sounds like a lot, but for us fighters, it's kind of like normal. And at the end of the day, I know worst case scenario, I'll have to do maybe like a 2 kilo water weight and water cut on the day of weigh-ins. And honestly, in comparison to some of these other guys, that's absolutely nothing. And it's a doable feat. It's just obviously not a comfortable thing to do, and it's not something that I'm gonna go head first into doing. And I'm gonna try and make it as easy as I possibly can. But yeah, it's just one of those things that I don't think people realize, that we're constantly calculating how many calories we're having, how many calories we're burning, making sure we can't do this or that or whatever, and just restricting ourselves mentally, which can be really, really taxing.
Absolutely. Just on featherweight, obviously your run in Bellator so far has been pretty impressive. I think you're 3-1 in the featherweight division, ranked number 6 now, and you get number 7, Leah McCourt, in a month's time at Bellator 259. Just tell us a little bit about that matchup and why you like it, or what you see in Leah that will make a fun fight.
Yeah, I'm super excited for this. This has kind of been a long time coming. I think it was maybe 2 or 3 fights of hers ago. She called me out after her fight, and obviously I caught wind of it and was 100% down for the matchup. There's a lot of girls in this division, and there's a lot of different names and stuff, and everyone brings different aspects. And as soon as obviously Leah called me out on the basis that I have beaten her teammate, it was a great kind of idea for me to get in the mix. And then as we kind of know, we were matched up in May last year, and then COVID hit and didn't let it go ahead. And then of course she got surgery. So this has definitely just been a long time coming. We've been ready for this fight, understanding her kind of style and everything like that. It's probably like one of the first fights that I'm sort of fighting that someone less experienced than me. In my whole professional career, I'm now like 6-4, like you said, so 10 fights into my professional career, and pretty much always only ever fought those people that were older and more experienced than me and had a much better reputation in a sense. So for me, it's like, okay, cool. Like I finally get to maybe taper back so much on the pressure and like a little bit more on the experimental side of things, and be able to show a lot more fun stuff and back myself in all my things that I do inspiring, or things that I get a lot of success in, rather than be scared of certain things. Of course, I'm not taking anyone lightly, and Leah in herself has a really great amateur record and a judo and jiu-jitsu background. So these are all great things to come in, and it just kind of makes me hungrier to really get the win. But not only that, show a really good performance and show a good range of skills while I do it. So it's been something that has excited me for a while, and now I'm just super excited that we finally get, hopefully, fingers crossed, touch wood, get to have it and get it done.
When the rankings came out, or when word came out that Bellator were doing rankings, did you think you'd find yourself so high up?
I didn't necessarily know where they would put me. I mean, because it has been a little bit of an up and down with Bellator losing my debut and then kind of going up and down. And everyone, especially with the featherweight females, we've all sort of fought each other, or like beaten this person and this person's beaten that person, but then that person's lost to this person. And it's kind of like a little bit confusing. I knew it was going to be a hard job for these guys to kind of put the top 10 into play. But once I did see it, I was definitely happy with it. I was happy with where I was at. I think it's definitely deserving for the people that I've fought, the names that I've fought. And I mean, it was just cool to see. I mean, I'm the youngest person in the top 10 from New Zealand. And it's just sort of like those 2 feats in itself, as much as it's definitely not the pinnacle of where I want to be, it's a great motivator midway through to know that this journey is well on its way, and we're heading in the right direction.
You mentioned the pinnacle. I had someone on Instagram come with the question, when are we going to see you in the UFC? Are we going to see you in the UFC? But being a featherweight, I feel like Bellator is the place to be, because that is far and away the best featherweight division you're going to find. Obviously, you got Kat Zingano now, Cyborg with the title. I mean, there's some big names in that division. Like, do you feel like Bellator is where you want to stay?
For the time being, definitely. I definitely feel like claiming the belt would definitely be one of those things that I want to have on my resume at the end of the day. Maybe later on down the track, a little bit further down the track, definitely like at least have 1 or 2 fights in the UFC just to tick it off the bucket list in a sense. It's obviously an attainable thing once you're in the mix. It's sort of obvious that you can kind of bounce around in a sense, but it just depends where the money is or what's the motivating factors. And at the moment, like you're saying, the motivating factors are definitely the range of opponents and the depth in the featherweight division in Bellator. I feel like it's obviously a little bit more credible. If I have the Bellator featherweight championship, I've like beaten or worked through a lot more people and bigger names than I have if I was over in the UFC, where they only have a few girls in that featherweight division. A lot of them are like one-time signers or whatever it may be. So I definitely think at the moment this is a great place for me. I'm in, like, I've only had one fight on this contract, so I'm definitely like kind of in the midst of this contract. I'll be here for another few years or so for now, but you never know what happens in the future, or anything can happen. I mean, like at the tip of a hat, everyone can move over to the UFC. You never really know. I highly doubt that would happen, but yeah, I'm never saying never. But at the moment, Bellator is definitely a fantastic place for me to prove myself and to prove my credibility at the end of the day when I retire and I'm like look back on those featherweights that I fought, or whether or not I move down to bantamweight or whatever it may be.
So is a move to bantamweight something that you might look at in the future?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's sort of like when I look at my like 4 or 5 year plan, I definitely look at the ideas of where to go from the pinnacle, like attaining the Bellator belt 100% right now. That's my whole focus. But after that, like, what do I want to achieve? What more do I want to do? There's like, greatness, and then there's even better. So moving around that idea and playing with the idea of obviously being double champ and having that possibility at the moment only really being viable in the UFC because Bellator doesn't have female bantamweights. Those are all definitely ideas to play with. At the moment, it's 100% the featherweight Bellator belt. But yeah, later on, like a move down to bantamweight isn't unattainable. It's going to be a hard cut for sure, and I'll have to change a few lifestyle habits. But just, yeah, obviously cut down a little bit more in between fights rather than sort of going up and down. But it's all kind of in the plan or in the options of things to do later on.
Obviously, this hasn't been an option for, say, the last year because of COVID, but obviously being from New Zealand, seeing all the guys down here doing what they're doing at the moment, have you ever thought of coming back and just hanging out at City Kickboxing for a little while?
Yeah, 100%. I was there at the start of 2019, I think it was, for a couple of weeks, and it was phenomenal training. Such a great team. The whole team was super welcoming. Eugene's obviously a great coach, and I really enjoyed it. And then it wasn't too long. Life got a little bit busy after that, and then it wasn't too long after that COVID hit. So it all sort of like took a bit of a curveball as an option, but it's 100% something that I would like to maybe not necessarily live there, but float back and forth every now and again, go over for training trips once. I mean, now the bubble's open, it's all well and good. Obviously, I'm fighting, but straight after this fight, I'm definitely planning on making a trip back to New Zealand, not only for the training aspect, but for my family and everything as well. So yeah, these are things that are all viable now to go back and maybe do like a month or so here and there, or I don't know, visit or whatnot, but go back as much as possible for sure.
What's the travel schedule looking like for getting over to Connecticut for your fight?
Yeah, it's actually not too bad. It's always like the flights themselves are the biggest variable because they can always cancel at any time just because they obviously don't get booked out as much as they used to. So it's less about like being able to leave the country and more about whether or not the airlines will like stick with their plans and stick with our bookings and stuff like that. Because I remember last time that was our biggest factor going over and coming back. Luckily enough, I have a trip planned for afterwards. Straight after Connecticut, I'll head over to Vegas for a few days and then hopefully to California. So a few stops in there, a bit of training, obviously networking and seeing people that I haven't seen in a while, and a few old training partners and stuff for sure. So right now everything looks good, but you never know. It's just like every day it could change. Our whole route could get cancelled the day before we leave, and then we just get rebooked. But that's how it is. That's the times at the moment. You just got to take it as it goes.
Are they a bit like the UFC and they bring you in and you have to quarantine for a few days before you can actually get out and about? Or is it just you get in, you come with a negative test and away you go?
Yeah, so you get tested before you leave. And then, of course, that's giving you the okay to jump on the plane. Once you get over there, we get tested when we get there. Then we just have to, stay in our room for that 1 day period, which is quite good. And then once your test results have come back, obviously as a negative, then you can roam around, but we can't leave the facility, obviously, like the casino. Very big area to kind of roam around in, which is good. We can't necessarily interact with the public. We can't go into the restaurants. We can't go into, there's an arcade there. We can't, unfortunate, but all sorts of stuff like that. And then, yeah, we basically just go straight from the room back to the training area, then back up to the room, back to the training area, and do that pretty much 2-3 times a day. But it's really good. The way they set it up is really good. Every morning we get like a questionnaire. We get a new wristband to just check us off that we're all good. Our temperature was checked, et cetera, et cetera. Everything's good to go, and we can kind of roam around and at least interact a little bit with the Bellator crew and those guys that are organizing it, get our photos done, do all these like typical fight week things.
And seeing the UFC card yesterday, UFC 261, did that just make you fizz even more to get back in there?
Absolutely. Just like the hype from the whole card from start to finish was amazing. Seeing the crowd back, seeing like the really good commentator crew, everything just made me super excited. Watching the upsets and the retentions of the 3 title like fights was amazing, and just knowing like those feelings and those emotions and everything, just super excited to get back in there and feel that for myself, because I know that not a lot of people get to experience this sport and what it has to offer. So yeah, I just can't wait.
What was your reaction to first of all the Jimmy Crute fight and how that finished, and then obviously Chris Weidman, who was very, very unfortunate in his fight and has just undergone surgery as well?
Yeah, Jimmy Crute obviously backing the Aussie, and all of us were behind him, and it was such an unfortunate finish. It was a little bit confusing as well because we didn't really know what had happened. I'm assuming it was the ankle, not necessarily the foot, but you never know. And I guess he was such a gun and such a G to still want to carry on and still walk forward, even though he hardly could. And it's such an unfortunate finish when you know that, yeah, he definitely won that first round as well. So you're kind of already going into the second with a little bit of momentum, but obviously that foot didn't allow him to carry on. So super devastated for him. Such an unfortunate way to finish a fight, but that's how the fight game goes. It's just annoying that whatever happened, whether he got caught or whether he landed on it bad or whatever maybe happened did. And then the Chris Weidman was like a massive shock. Like, you don't expect 17 seconds into the fight, one strike thrown basically, that foot is just going to wrap all the way around the knee. Like, any of those kind of things are just terrible to watch. And a lot of people were in my DMs asking me if I was scared to throw leg kicks. 100% no. Like, me personally, one, I have FOB genetics, so I definitely have like solid ass legs. But also on top of that, yeah, like that's just an unfortunate thing to happen. You can't go into fighting thinking, oh, if I punch someone, I'm going to break my hand. So you shouldn't really do the same with your legs and stuff as well. But it's just super unfortunate. Great to see that he came out of surgery and it went successful. But what a way for a fight to go within such a short time as well. It all was really crazy.
Was there anything in the title fights that surprised you, or any of the results that you weren't picking?
I definitely had Valentina and Rose for the first 2. I did have Jorge for the main event, just hoping that, yeah, he came, like, what a story if he came back and did get the title after his up-down journey and stuff. But not necessarily any major surprises. I mean, Usman by knockout was a little bit of a surprise. Like, I definitely kind of thought maybe TKO or like even decision and stuff. Obviously based on his wrestling experience in that. Valentina surprised me in how confident she was to go like a different game plan, 7 takedowns, like from a obviously phenomenal striker. That was very interesting that she didn't even really care too much to stay on the feet and stand and bang. She wanted to show off that wrestling and that it wasn't even really wrestling, more like the throws and stuff, but still, like, she wanted to show off her like ability to really adapt and stuff, and then to finish in a crucifix against a black belt, like, that's pretty insane. I think like it wasn't necessarily a surprise because she's a phenomenal athlete, and every time we see Valentina fight, she gets 10 times better each time. But at the same time, it was very exciting to see her change it up so dynamically and really pull it off 100%. That was amazing. Rose with the head kick. I mean, we already know that she has knockout power in both her hands and her feet, so it wasn't necessarily a surprise. But what what a dominant way to finish a fight and retain a belt or get a belt back. And such an emotional journey for her as well. So there wasn't really any surprises, but it was just such a great roller coaster to sort of follow when those last 3 fights were on. It was really, really cool to watch.
It's before we let you go, we've got a couple of questions from the old Instagram. First of all, if you could pick any one fighter to stand across the cage against, who would that be? Any weight division, say you just had your pick of the litter.
I think I always usually say the same thing. I would definitely want to fight Gina Carano, like back in the day at one point. Obviously, whatever weight and anything like that. I just think that would have been a phenomenal fight. And she's got a very sort of similar fight style to me in the sense that she pushes the action as well. I think it would have been, just a great test, and also one of those things where you get to fight your hero and that kind of thing, someone that you looked up to during your career. It would be an amazing fight to have experience.
What made you want to follow mixed martial arts instead of, they've put it, a normal job?
Yeah, true. It wasn't anything in particular. It was honestly just my love for the sport. Once I had started it as a hobby during school, I was doing it maybe 2-3 times a week from the age of 15. So obviously you can't really expect to see it as a career at that point. But as soon as I finished school and I was in search of something to do or a journey to sort of and a pathway to go on, I kind of just realized that there wasn't really anything that came close to the love I have for martial arts and the fulfillment that it gives me. So therefore, that was the whole motivator. It was like I was brought up knowing that you could do whatever you wanted as long as you put your mind to it. So I guess I didn't have like a boxy mindset, thinking that there was only so many options. I had to go to uni or I had to, do a trade or something, whatever the conventional pathways are. I just knew that I wanted to do what I love for the rest of my life. And somehow I had found that in martial arts. And once I started fighting, I really proved that I was not too bad at it. And so I was like, well, I'm good at it. I love it. Let's just do this and throw everything at it. And worst case scenario, we go to uni later and figure it out. But yeah, for now it's worked out luckily. And I think, once you find your niche, it'll be enough motivation in itself to give you all the need you want to sacrifice for it and move towards it.
And just lastly, is there anything that you do on fight day that has become sort of a ritual, something that you have to do before you get into the cage?
I'm like the exact opposite. And I think from like one of my first few fights, I was like, never make any rituals, never make anything that you're going to mentally ride on and think, I have to do this today. Otherwise the day's not going to go as to plan. Obviously I set my plans and I am very meticulous in how both fight day, weight cut day, and the whole week is. I make sure that like by the book things happen when I want them to happen. But at the same time, I kind of allow for the opportunity that if it doesn't happen, it's okay. Like it's all good. We're still going to win either way. The result's going to be the same. And maybe, maybe somebody comes in and throws off your plans, or you don't have the environment. Like at the moment with COVID, we can't do anywhere near as much stuff as we used to be able to do, or leave the venue and stuff. So we're a little bit restricted. And for that reason, I think it's really good to not hold on to anything too specific so that you don't fizz out when you can't be able to do it or it's getting taken away from you or whatever reason.
Sweet. Well, that's all the time I need to take off your hands. Janay Harding, thank you very much. And everyone watching, make sure to catch her live in the cage again against Leah McCourt, Bellator 259 on May 21.